My name is Grace Hartwell, and I was 18 years old when I learned that hard work doesn't always pay off. Sometimes it just gives people something to tear apart. I'd earned a full-ride scholarship to one of the top 3 art schools in the country. Design program. Tuition waived. Housing covered. Everything I'd spent 3 years bleeding for, the sleepless nights, the aching fingers, the half-empty tubes of paint I'd scraped clean because I couldn't afford new ones, it had finally paid off. I thought my life was about to begin. Instead, it ended at the dinner table. The fish was still steaming. My mother, Diane, was piling more food onto my plate like she always did, her fork moving with that automatic efficiency she'd perfected over decades of feeding a family of 7. My father, Robert, picked up that envelope with the official university seal, the one that said "full scholarship offer," and held it up for everyone to see. All 7 of us were there. Grandma Ella at the far end, silent as always in her wheelchair. Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda on one side. Aunt Pat on the other. My younger brother Kevin across from me, already scrolling through his phone under the table. The sound of paper tearing was so crisp it felt like something snapping inside my skull. "I'll say this one last time," my father announced, tossing the shredded pieces into the trash can beside the table. The motion was so casual, so dismissive, like he was throwing away junk mail. "My daughter does not need to waste money on more schooling. Your mother's health isn't great. Kevin starts private school next year. Every dollar in this house is stretched thin, and you want to run off chasing some ridiculous fantasy? Where's your conscience?" Kevin snorted without looking up from his phone. "Seriously, Grace. Art? What are you gonna do with that? Draw portraits at the mall? My friend's sister works at the grocery store checkout and makes $3,000 a month. That's actual money." My mother kept her eyes on her plate, reaching over to add another piece of fish to my bowl like she hadn't heard a word. "Listen to your father, sweetheart. A stable job, a good marriage, that's what matters for a girl. You'll understand when you're older." My Uncle Mark cracked open another sunflower seed between his teeth. "Don't be difficult, Grace. Your father's worked hard to raise you." Aunt Linda nodded along. "All that education, and for what? You'll just end up getting married anyway." Aunt Pat went further. She pulled out her phone and shoved the screen in my face. "Look at this article. It says women with too much education have a harder time finding husbands. Your father is looking out for you. 7 people. 7 mouths." Every single word landed like a nail being hammered into my chest. I was still clutching the half that had fallen into my lap. My fingernails had dug into the paper so hard they'd left crescent-shaped dents. I wanted to say, "The scholarship covers everything. Tuition is free. Housing is free. I earned this myself. It didn't cost you a single cent." But my mouth felt like it had been glued shut. Because I knew it wouldn't matter. In this house, my father's word was law. My grandfather had ruled the same way when he was alive. My grandmother had spent 40 years not saying a word against it. My mother had married into the family and learned to keep her head down. And me? I didn't even have the right to keep my head down. I was just a future expense they'd eventually be rid of, a daughter who would marry out and stop being their problem. Then, from the far end of the table, came a small sound. Grandma Ella set her spoon down against the rim of her bowl. The ceramic clink was quiet, but in that suffocating silence, it landed like a stone dropped into still water. Nobody looked at her. Nobody ever did. She was furniture. From as far back as I could remember, she'd been in that wheelchair in the corner, always quiet, always overlooked. People interrupted her mid-sentence without apologizing. People forgot to serve her dinner and she never complained. My mother would occasionally put a piece of meat on her plate, and that was considered an act of remarkable generosity. But that night, she didn't wait for anyone to ask if she was finished. My granddaughter, Grandma Ella said, her voice not loud but clear enough that every syllable cut through the noise, is going nowhere. She's reporting to school tomorrow. My father frowned and turned his head toward her. Mom, don't interfere with this. Grace and I have already discussed it. You discussed it with yourself, Grandma Ella said, setting her spoon down completely now. I'm telling you, I disagree. The table went quiet for 2 beats. Then Uncle Mark let out a laugh. Come on, Mom. You don't get a vote on whether Grace goes to school or not. Grandma Ella didn't acknowledge him. She placed both hands on the armrests of her wheelchair and began to push herself up. It was slow, agonizingly slow, and her arms were trembling with the effort. Everyone stared. None of us had seen her stand on her own in years. Her legs were weak. She almost never left that chair except to be moved by someone else. But that night, she stood. And once she was upright, she stayed that way, straight-backed and steady, holding her ground like a tree that had finally remembered how to grow. She reached into the pocket of her faded canvas wallet, the one with the broken zipper that she'd been carrying as long as I could remember, and pulled out something folded into a square so crisp and tight that the creases had turned white with age. She passed it across the table to me. Open it. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The paper was yellowed, the edges soft and frayed. I unfolded it carefully, afraid it would crumble in my fingers. It was an admissions letter. The same university. The same design program. The same full scholarship. Dated 28 years ago. Addressed to Eleanor Hartwell. My grandmother. I got in too, Grandma Ella said. Her voice was calm. Matter of fact. Like she was telling me the weather. Same school. Same major. Same scholarship. My father went pale. His skin took on that grayish tint I'd only ever seen on him when he was genuinely afraid. Mom, what are you talking about? You were always. Always what? Always at home. Grandma Ella laughed. There was no humor in it. You go ask your father. Ask him how he tore my acceptance letter up in front of the whole family. Ask him how he carried all my paintings, everything I'd done that whole summer, out into the yard and set them on fire. The table went dead quiet. My grandfather had been dead for 3 years. He'd never been mentioned like this before, not with this weight, not with this raw edge in her voice. The air in the room thickened. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. My father opened his mouth and closed it twice before finally forcing out words. That was a long time ago, Mom. And you turned out fine. You had a roof over your head, food on the table, children, grandchildren. Fine. Grandma Ella stepped forward. 1 step. Then another. She stopped in front of him still sitting, her standing, looking down at her own son. I was 18. My teacher told me I had real talent. He said I could make something of myself. And your father said a woman showing her face in public was shameful. He tore my letter up in front of me. He tore up my drawings. He burned everything I'd worked on for 3 months. And then I spent 40 years cooking and cleaning and raising 3 children and nursing your father through his final illness. And do you know what I've done in those 40 years? I've regretted it. Every Single day. My mother finally set down her chopsticks. Mom, that's not fair. Every family needs someone to make sacrifices. Sacrifices? Grandma Ella turned to face her. You graduated with an accounting degree. I saw the books you bought to study for your CPA exam. What happened to that? My mother's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Your father-in-law told you a woman didn't need a career, she needed to take care of her children. And you listened. Grandma Ella's voice stayed low, but each word landed with the force of a hammer. So now you're still a junior bookkeeper at a small firm. You call it sacrifice. I call it living someone else's life. My mother's face flushed red, but she couldn't form a reply. Grandma Ella turned to my uncle and aunt. You too. When you got married and couldn't afford your first apartment, who lent you the money from her retirement fund? Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda both looked down at their plates. I never asked for it back, Grandma Ella said. There was a tremor in her voice now, but it wasn't weakness. But I remember every word you've said tonight. Every single one. Then she turned back to my father. Her own son. Robert, she said, using his full first name in a way she'd never done before, you're 44 years old. You have a house, a car, a son. Your sister wanted to go to college, and you said the family couldn't afford it. She spent 20 years on an assembly line. Your other sister got accepted to a teaching program, and you told her teachers didn't make enough money. She married a man who drinks. Now it's your own daughter's turn. Are you going to do to her what your father did to me? My father's eyes went red. Mom, that's not what I. Whether it is or isn't, you know the truth of it. Grandma Ella walked back to her wheelchair and lowered herself into it. The movement was slower than before, and I could see the effort it cost her. She picked up her bowl and her spoon. I'm saying this now, and I mean it. Grace is going to that school. Anyone who tries to stop her will answer to me. She took a sip of her congee and looked up at me. Grace. That scholarship, do you need to pay tuition? I shook my head so hard it hurt. No. It covers everything. Tuition, housing, everything. I only need money for food and supplies. I'll cover that, Grandma Ella said simply. I get $3,200 a month from my pension. That's enough for you to eat on. My father shot to his feet. Mom. You can't, you need that money for yourself. You have health problems. My money, my choice. She didn't even look at him. You handle your son. I'll handle my granddaughter. Today, that's where I draw the line. That night, I wheeled her back to her room. She held my hand and said something I'll never forget, go see what that school looks like. For both of us. I cried in her arms until my eyes were raw. But I had no idea that night was just the beginning. For the next month, my father used every tool in his arsenal to break me. First strategy, the nightly lecture. Every evening after dinner, he'd plant himself on the living room couch like a judge on the bench and lecture me until my ears rang. From ingratitude to selfishness. From, what about your brother, to, we raised you for 18 years and this is how you repay us. Same script, every single night. I'd sit across from him, looking at my hands, and every time I said, I understand, Dad, he'd slam his palm on the coffee table and yell, you don't understand anything. One night he went from 7 to 10. 3 straight hours. His voice went hoarse. My mother refilled his water glass 3 times, and he drank all of it and kept going. Kevin sat in the corner with his gaming headset on, volume cranked, but I caught him glancing at me between rounds, and there was a smirk on his face. The look of someone enjoying a show. Second strategy, cutting off resources. The next morning, my phone wouldn't make calls. My father had removed my line from the family plan. His reason: if you're leaving, you're not using my money. I walked to the phone store to buy my own SIM card, only to find that my mother had put away my ID. "Just wait," she said. "Let your father cool down first." 3 days later, he hadn't cooled down. He gathered all my art supplies, paints, brushes, paper, sketchbooks, stuffed them into trash bags and dumped them in the building's garbage bin. The next day, when they were both at work, I went down to find the bin completely empty. The garbage truck had come. I crouched next to that empty metal box for a long time. Those supplies had cost me 2 years of saved allowances and part-time job money. 1 tube of titanium white was still 3/4 full. I'd been saving it for my graduation portfolio piece. Third strategy, the family intervention. My uncle and aunt came over 3 times a week to reason with me. They'd sit on the couch for hours, cracking sunflower seeds and drinking tea and saying the same things over and over. Girls should be stable. Your father knows what's best. Don't be so stubborn. My aunt sent me articles in the family group chat with titles like, "Why Higher Education Hurts Women's Marriage Prospects." My mother's brother, Uncle Frank, even called to say, "There's a position waiting for you at the factory, Grace. $2,600 a month. Better than some art degree." One night, I scrolled back through the family group chat. A full month of messages. Every single one about me was the same: Grace should give up. Grace is being unreasonable. Someone needs to talk sense into her. Nobody asked me what I wanted. Nobody asked if I was tired. Nobody asked how much it had taken to get that scholarship. Fourth strategy, and the one that broke something inside me, came from my brother. Kevin was 12. The golden child. The son my parents had always wanted. He came home from school one evening and found me on the living room floor sketching on a scrap of paper with a pencil. My father had taken everything else, but he'd overlooked my pencils. Kevin walked right over and planted his sneaker right in the middle of my drawing, grinding his heel in until the lead was smeared into nothing. Then he kicked my easel. It hit the floor with a crash that echoed through the whole apartment. One of the wooden legs cracked clean in two. "Who's gonna cook for me when you're gone?" He was looking down at me, arms crossed, that smirk back on his face. "Go ahead, leave. I'll tear up every drawing you've ever made." I knelt there, picking up the broken pieces of the easel leg, and my hands were shaking. Not from fear. From rage. The kind of pure, white-hot fury that makes your teeth clench so hard your jaw aches. My mother stuck her head out of the kitchen, glanced at the mess, and said, "Kevin, stop playing around. Come eat dinner." Then she went back in. She'd seen the easel. She'd seen the broken leg. She'd seen her son standing over her daughter like a bully. She said nothing. Kevin made a face at me and ran to the table. I gathered every splinter of that broken leg and took it to my room. I glued it back together that night, but it didn't hold. Later, in my dorm room, I'd repair it with nails and black electrical tape. Every time I saw that tape, I remembered that evening. I told myself to let it go. He was 12. He was just a kid. Family is family. Then, 2 weeks before my freshman year was supposed to start, something happened that made me finally stop telling myself that. I came home from school, still a senior, 2 weeks left, and found the apartment quiet. My mother was in her bedroom, scrolling through social media on her phone with the volume on full blast. I walked toward the bathroom to wash my face. I pushed the door open and my brain stopped working. Grandma Ella was on the floor. Her head had hit the edge of the bathtub, and blood was streaking down her forehead and cheek. A dark pool had spread across the tiles. Her hand was ice cold. I didn't know how long she'd been lying there. My mother was one room away, headphones on, hearing nothing. I rushed to her side, calling her name 3 times before her eyelids fluttered. "It's nothing," she whispered, touching the blood with her fingers. I just slipped. But her voice was faint. Her lips were white. The cut on her forehead was still bleeding through the tissues I pressed against it. I dragged my mother out of her room. She pulled off her headphones, looked at the blood on the floor, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "Oh my God, you got blood everywhere. Clean that up right now." Not, "Mom, are you okay?" Not, "Should we call an ambulance?" Just, "Clean it up." I scrubbed the tiles that night with tears running down my face. Grandma Ella sat on the toilet lid, watching me, and reached out to touch my head. Her hand was still cold. That night, I helped her to bed and bandaged her wound. She sat silently while I dabbed iodine on the cut, not a single wince, not a single sound. She'd spent so many years being quiet that silence had become automatic. "Grandma," I asked, "how long were you on the floor?" "Not long," she said. But I knew she was lying. The blood had started to dry at the edges. At least 30 minutes. 30 minutes while I was doing homework in the next room and my mother was watching videos in the one after that. Nobody heard her fall. Maybe she hadn't even called out. She'd learned not to. That night, I locked my bedroom door and opened my laptop. I started digging into my father's company. He was a sales manager at a mid-sized building materials firm. I pulled up public business records, shareholder structures, executive lists, recent job postings. I found industry forums where employees talked about the company. Then I picked up his phone. He had a habit of boasting in the family group chat when he'd been drinking. He left his phone on the coffee table, screen unlocked. The password was my birthday. He'd never once changed it. For 2 hours that night, I scrolled through his messages. He'd said things I'd never fully registered before. I started screenshotting. A year ago March, a conversation with a client about a $5,000 kickback. His words, "Done deal. Money's handled." A year ago June, a message to a company vice president. "Don't worry, my friend. Everything is clean on paper." 8 months ago September, off-books dividends. 12 grand, straight to my personal account. No company records. 3 months ago December, instructions about contract signing. 2 versions for the employees. 1 for the tax office. 1 for actual pay. And in the family chat, a message with a thumbs up emoji and "this year's earnings." The number made my stomach drop. My uncle had replied with, "You're a legend, brother." My father sent back, just the usual. 37 screenshots. I saved them to my cloud drive. 3 different folders. 3 separate backups. Then I checked my mother's payment accounts. She didn't know I'd memorized her passwords. She'd been transferring money out of my bank account without telling me. 6 transfers. Total, $2,300. The first, $300, last September, Kevin tutoring. The second, $500, November, household. The third, $200, December, grace allowance. She'd put that as the note for a transfer from my account. The fourth, $350, January, New Year expenses. The 5th, 400, March, Kevin Math Camp. The 6th, 5:30, May, Beauty Salon Annual Membership. $2,300. 2 destinations, my brother's tutoring, and her own beauty salon card. I saved those transfers too. I finished at 3 in the morning and lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart hammering so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I wasn't a bad person. I'd never hurt anyone in my life. But that night, I learned something: if you don't protect yourself, nobody will. The next day I went to school and found my homeroom teacher, Ms. Patterson. She was in her 50s and had taught me English for 3 years. I told her the whole story. When I finished, her eyes were red. She didn't say a word, just stood up and marched me straight to the grade director's office. Mr. Thornton was in his 40s, wiry, wore glasses, and had a reputation for being tough but fair. He listened to my story in absolute silence. When I was done, he opened a drawer and pulled out a document. "This is a student rights notification," he said. "Under federal law and state education code, any student over the age of 18 has the right to enroll in higher education without parental consent. Your scholarship is tied to your student ID number, not anyone else's signature. Nobody can take it from you." He paused and added, "If anyone from your family shows up at the university to cause trouble, campus security will handle it. You come to orientation. We'll take care of the rest." I made 3 copies of that document. 1 in my backpack. 1 in my textbook. 1 under my pillow. 5 days before move-in, my father made his final move. He called a family meeting. Everyone came: Uncle Mark, Aunt Linda, Aunt Pat, my mother, Kevin. 8 people crushed into our small living room. My father stood in the middle with a stack of cash in his hand. $500. Red bills that caught the overhead light and glowed. "Grace." His voice was flat, like a judge handing down a sentence. "I'm asking you one last time. Are you going to the factory, or are you going to school?" "School, Dad." He threw the cash on the coffee table. "Take this. Go to work. In a year, I'll raise your pay. But if you walk out that door for that school, you'll never get another penny from this family. You're not coming back. And as of tonight, you're not my daughter anymore." The bills scattered across the tabletop. I stared at them. "Dad," I said, my voice as steady as I could make it, "the scholarship covers everything. I don't need family money. And I will come back. This is my home. Don't need family money?" His voice pitched up so suddenly it cracked. "You've eaten my food. You've slept under my roof. You've used my electricity, my water, my heating. Every grain of rice you've consumed in 18 years came from my work. And now you're just walking away? Who's going to take care of your brother? Who's going to help your mother when she's sick? Do you have any sense of responsibility at all?" Kevin didn't even look up from his phone. His thumbs were flying across the screen as he said, "Yeah, seriously. Who's gonna make my breakfast? Mom said if you leave, I have to eat out every morning. That's like $100 a month." My mother was wiping down the kitchen counter. It was already spotless. "Just listen to your father, Grace. Don't make things hard for everyone." Aunt Linda chimed in. "A nice stable job, a nice stable life. That's what girls need." Aunt Pat shoved her phone at me again. "Another article. It says too much education leads to depression. Your father loves you. That's why he's doing this." I stood in the middle of the room, listening to all of them, and something strange happened. I felt calm. Not the good kind of calm. The kind where a rope snaps, and suddenly the weight that's been choking you isn't there anymore. Their voices faded into the background. I saw my father's red face, Kevin's bent neck, my mother's nervous hands, my aunt's sunflower seed shells piling up on the coffee table. It all looked like a scene from a play I no longer belonged to. I turned my head. Grandma Ella was sitting in her usual spot, knitting. Her needles hadn't stopped moving once. But I saw the corner of her mouth twitch upward, the smallest smile in the world. Only I would have noticed it. The last of the tension in my chest let go. I reached into my backpack and pulled out the student rights notification. I walked to the coffee table and set it down in front of my father. "Dad, read this." He picked it up, squinted at it, and his face changed. "What is this?" "It means I'm 18, I said. "I don't need your signature to enroll. And I already went to the DMV and got a replacement ID. I don't need your permission for anything." 2 seconds of dead silence. Kevin dropped his phone. "You stole Mom's ID?" "I got my own replacement ID," I said. "That's not stealing." I pulled out a second folder and opened it. Inside were 37 printed pages of his own words. "Dad, everything you said in the family group chat, I saved it. The kickbacks. The off-books deals. The contracts you made employees sign. All of it." His face went from red to white to gray. He was choking. "You're threatening your own father?" "I'm making a deal," I said. "You let me go to school, and these files stay deleted. You don't, and I'll do what I have to. Your company has a compliance audit next month, doesn't it? What do you think happens when the CEO's office gets this folder?" My mother screamed. "Grace, how could you do this to your father?" I turned to her. "Mom, I also have screenshots of the $2,300 you transferred out of my account. All those notes you put in the transfer descriptions: Grace allowance, household, Kevin tutoring. Should I show Aunt Linda the one that went to your beauty salon?" Aunt Linda's head snapped up. "What, $3,000? And $1,200 of it went to your spa membership," I said, looking straight at my mother. "How do you think that's going to go over?" Uncle Mark stood up. "Robert, what the hell is going on with your family's finances?" My father's lips were moving, but nothing was coming out. I kept going. I looked at Kevin. "You asked who's going to make your breakfast. So let me ask you, last winter break, when you stayed at your friend's house for 5 days, who woke up at 6 every morning to cook you noodles? Who waited by the phone until 11 at night because you said you missed home, and then drove 2 hours to pick you up?" Kevin shrank back into the couch, suddenly unable to meet my eyes. I looked at my uncle and aunt. "You come over 3 times a week to talk about family harmony. But when Grandma lent you that money from her retirement fund, she said one thing: you don't have to pay it back. Just come visit me once in a while. How many times have you visited? In the last 5 years, how many?" Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda both turned crimson. Aunt Linda's mouth opened and shut soundlessly. I turned to Aunt Pat. "You keep sending me articles about why women shouldn't study. Let me ask you something. Your daughter, my cousin, where is she now? She got into a decent college and you told her not to go. She's been working retail for 3 years. Does she ever talk to you anymore?" Aunt Pat's face went gray. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't speak. The room was so quiet I could hear Kevin's phone vibrating against the couch cushion. I turned back to my father one last time. Dad, I'm not trying to fight you. I just want to go to school. I earned this myself. I'm not asking for your money. Why won't you just let me go? His eyes were bloodshot. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Finally, something came out, barely above a whisper. Fine. Go. The room exhaled. But I wasn't done. Dad, I said, pulling out a third folder. One more thing. What? His voice sounded like gravel. Your company. I said enough. He roared it, then collapsed back onto the couch like a puppet with its strings cut. You win, Grace. Fine. Go. Do whatever you want. Just don't come back. You walk out that door, you're not coming back. He buried his face in his hands. His shoulders started to shake. My mother was crying, loud, theatrical sobs, wailing about how our family is falling apart. Kevin had picked up his phone again, fingers moving frantically, pretending he didn't exist. My aunt and uncle were just staring at each other, faces pale. Aunt Pat had already grabbed her purse and walked out without a word. One room full of chaos. And over it all, click, click, click. Grandma Ella's knitting needles. Still going. I stood there, taking it in. I thought I'd feel relieved. I didn't. I just felt exhausted. Okay, I said. I'm leaving. I picked up my suitcase and started for the door. Halfway there, the clicking stopped. Wait. I turned around. Grandma Ella was pushing herself to her feet, faster this time, like she'd been waiting for this moment all night. She walked to me, reached into that old canvas wallet, and pulled out everything she had. A stack of crumpled bills. 5s and 10s and 20s. Maybe $200 in total. Take it, she said, pressing it into my palm. Buy yourself something to eat on the way. Grandma, I have money. Take it. Her voice was sharp. Hard. My granddaughter's tuition, I'm paying my share. I wrapped my arms around her at the door and sobbed into her shoulder. She was so thin under her sweater. She patted my back, slow and steady, like she'd done when I was 6 and scraped my knee. Don't cry, she said. Go see what that school looks like. Come back and tell me every single detail. Don't leave anything out. I nodded into her neck, tears soaking into her collar. When I stepped through the door, the apartment went dead quiet behind me. Nobody called my name. Nobody followed. Nobody asked me to stay. But I heard her voice one last time. She was talking to the room, not to me. The day you stop her from going, she said, is the day you'll become me. And trust me, nobody wants that. The door clicked shut. I've never heard anything heavier in my life. Move-in day, I arrived at the university alone. The campus was huge. Plane trees lined every walkway, their leaves so thick that sunlight filtered through in patches, scattering golden coins across the pavement. Students and parents swarmed everywhere, hundreds of rolling suitcases, thousands of voices. I was the only person I saw without someone walking beside me. I didn't feel lonely. My sketchbook was strapped to my left shoulder, my backpack on the right. In my pocket was Grandma's crumpled cash, and tucked into the front pouch was my repaired acceptance letter, taped back together, the cracks still visible, but whole. Registration took 10 minutes. The admin clerk looked up my name, smiled, and said, Grace Hartwell? Full scholarship, design program. Welcome. Dorm is building 7, 3rd floor. Here's your key and your course schedule. There's a meal stipend too, $800 a month, just fill out this form. $800. Plus the $1,000 grandma sent me every month. $1,800 total. I could work with that. My dorm room was a 4-person suite. My 3 suitemates had already arrived. Sarah Chen was a local, her parents were still there, fussing over her bedspread, her mom lecturing about separating lights and darks in the laundry. Maya Zhao had traveled from out of state, her mother tearfully stuffing snacks into her closet. Nina Zhou's father had dropped her off and left. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed with her headphones in, ignoring everyone. Sarah was the first to notice me. "Hey, you're in design too?" "Yeah. Here alone." She glanced behind me. "Your parents didn't come?" "No," I said. "I'm fine on my own." She didn't pry. She just smiled and said, "Well, we're roommates now. Let me know if you need anything." Then her mom swooped in with a paper bag of steamed buns. I politely declined 3 times before giving up and accepting 2. That night, I sat on the curb outside the dorm and called my grandmother. She picked up before the second ring. "Arrived?" "Yeah." "Is it big?" "Big. Lots of plane trees. Even taller than the ones in our neighborhood." "Pretty." "Really pretty. I'll send photos tomorrow." I heard her laugh on the other end, soft, light, like dry leaves stirring in the wind. "Good," she said. "Look at as much of it as you can for me." I sat there for a long time after we hung up, crying. But this was a different kind of crying from before. Not grief. Not fear. Something closer to relief. I ate one of the steamed buns. It was cold by then, but still delicious. The weeks that followed were quiet. Classes. Sketching. Long hours in the library. Foundation courses filled my schedule: drawing, color theory, composition, design history. Every class had homework. I drew until the dorm lights went off. On weekends, I worked as a gallery assistant at the campus art space, hanging shows and adjusting track lighting. An extra $800 a month. My scholarship hit my account like clockwork. And every month, without fail, Grandma sent her $1,000. I'd asked her to stop more than once. She never listened. "It's my money," she'd say, her voice carrying that note of finality that had never been there before I left. "I'll spend it on whoever I want. If you don't use it, I'll save it for your wedding. Now focus on your drawing. Don't worry about me." So I let her send it. But every month I mailed something back: pressed autumn leaves, postcards from the campus shop, little watercolor sketches the size of my palm. She kept them all in a small box. "Mrs. Patterson's seen them all," she told me once. "She says you're really good." The first month, my father called. His voice was stiff, formal, like he was talking to a client. How's everything there? Do you have enough money?" "Yes." "Good." A long pause. "Your mother's fine." Kevin's grades are okay." I knew Kevin had placed 27th from the bottom of his class. My mother had been complaining about it in the family chat. But I didn't say anything. I just said, "Good. All right, you take care." He hung up. Those calls came every month after that, always under 2 minutes. My mother never called, she sent texts instead. "Have you eaten? Are you warm enough? Do you need money?" I'd reply with one-word answers: yes. Yes. No. It felt like corresponding with distant relatives. Kevin added me on social media. His first message: "When are you coming back? Mom's cooking is terrible." I sent back a laughing emoji and nothing else. He tried a few more times. Can you buy me this skin? Does your art sell for real money? And I left every message on read. Everything changed 3 months into my freshman year. I was in the studio, finishing a composition assignment due the next morning. Just one more page. Then my phone started vibrating. Over and over. I picked it up. 6 missed calls from Aunt Linda. Dozens of voice messages on the family app, all sent in the last 30 minutes. I played the first one. Her voice was shrill, panicked. Grace, come home now. Your father's in trouble. Someone reported him to his company. Mark says they're auditing everything. You need to come right away. The rest were variations on the same theme. They suspended him. They brought in investigators. The house is in chaos. Your mother can't stop crying. I sat in the studio, staring at the screen. My heart was pounding, but my face was blank. I knew it wasn't me. I'd deleted every screenshot the night I left. Laptop, cloud, phone, all 3 backup folders. Gone. The investigation had nothing to do with anything I'd done. But I still booked the earliest train home for the next morning. I asked Sarah to finish the last page of my assignment, packed a small bag, and left at dawn. I walked through the front door at 10 in the morning. The living room was packed. My father was slumped in the center of the couch, his face gray, his lips cracked, dark circles carved under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. My mother was beside him, her eyes swollen, a mountain of used tissues at her feet. Kevin was in the corner, scrolling through his phone, pretending he was alone. Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda were there. Aunt Pat and her husband. Uncle Frank and his wife. Every relative who'd ever had an opinion about my life was crammed into that room, all of them talking over each other at full volume. Someone called the company. They found discrepancies in the accounts. They traced it back to Robert. How much are we talking? They said at least $250,000. Is he going to jail? Don't say that. I'm just asking. The voices smeared together into noise. When I pushed through the door, silence descended for 1 full second. My father's head came up. His eyes found me, and I saw that terrible hope, the look of a drowning man spotting driftwood. Grace. His voice was scraped raw. You came. I came. I dropped my bag by the door and stood still. Uncle Mark sidled up to me, lowering his voice. Someone sent an anonymous email to the company board. Listed everything, dates, amounts, vendors, how the money moved. They went straight to the CFO. It's serious. They're talking about prosecution. I kept my face neutral. Do they know who sent it? No. Mark shook his head. Overseas IP. Untraceable. Your father says he never made any enemies. He can't figure out who'd do this to him. I didn't say anything. Because my father did have enemies. He'd made them every time he opened his mouth after a third drink. Every boast he'd posted in the family chat. Every word he'd let slip at a dinner table about how much he was skimming. The world is full of people waiting to catch you at your weakest moment. My father had put his weakest moments on public display for years. He just hadn't noticed. The room erupted again. Uncle Mark was telling my father to hire a lawyer. Aunt Pat was recommending a friend who knew a judge. Uncle Frank was suggesting he leave town before the subpoenas came. Every piece of advice was worse than the one before it. My father stayed hunched on the couch, face in his hands. I stood outside the circle, watching. Something stirred in my chest, a strange, conflicting tangle. Part of me felt sorry for him. He was still my father. He'd carried me on his shoulders when I was small, taken me to the park, taught me to ride a bike. That hadn't stopped being true just because the rest of it was also true. But the other part of me was watching from somewhere far away. Thinking, finally. Finally something happened. Finally something fell. Then my father lifted his head and looked at Grandma Ella. She was in her usual spot. The far end of the dining table. Wheelchair. Silent. She hadn't knit a single stitch since I'd walked in. She was just sitting there, watching the circus with an expression I couldn't quite read. Something close to peace. My father stared at her for a long time. Then he did something that made the whole room stop. He got up. Slowly, like every bone in his body had been replaced with lead. He walked across the room to Grandma Ella's wheelchair and lowered himself, not into a bow, but into something lower. His knees buckled. He caught himself on her armrests, his head dropping until it was almost touching her knees. And he said 3 words. "I'm sorry." Dead silence. "Mom." His voice broke on the second syllable. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I've been wrong about everything. What happened to you, I shouldn't have repeated it. What I did to Grace, I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry." Grandma Ella looked down at him. Her face was unreadable. The silence stretched out, 10 seconds. 20. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Then she reached out and placed her hand on top of his head. Just like she used to do when he was a little boy. "Stand up," she said quietly. "You're 44 years old. Don't do this in front of your children. Say what you need to say on your feet." He straightened. His eyes were red, tears sliding down his cheeks. He didn't wipe them away. He turned to face the room, me, my mother, my uncle, my aunt, everyone, and said, with a raw voice, "It's what I deserved." Then he went to his room and closed the door. I heard a thud from inside, like something hitting the wall. A fist. A pillow. I didn't know. I didn't ask. That night, I sat on the edge of Grandma Ella's bed. Her hands were still cold, but they felt warmer than before. I held one. "Grandma," I said, "do you hate Dad?" She thought about it. Stared at the ceiling like she was flipping through an old photo album. "Did," she said finally. "For 40 years. I got tired of it." "Do you forgive him?" Another pause. Then a small, real smile. "Forgiveness isn't the word. He's my son. What am I supposed to do? 40 years of hate is enough for one lifetime." She squeezed my hand. "But I didn't send you to school so I could forgive anyone. I sent you so you wouldn't live my life. You're living yours. That's what matters." My throat swelled shut. I couldn't speak. My uncle spent the next week trying to find the whistleblower. He never did. The email had come from an overseas address, routed through anonymous servers. The content was detailed enough that only someone with deep access could have known. My father ran through every grudge he'd ever held, every coworker he'd ever crossed. Finally, he said, "Maybe I said something I shouldn't have to the wrong person at the wrong time." He wasn't right. But he wasn't wrong either. He had said things he shouldn't have to someone he'd never considered a threat, his own daughter. She'd heard him, remembered his words, screenshotted them, saved them, and on the night he'd tried to break her, she'd shown him what she had. He thought it was a bluff. It was never a bluff. Before I deleted every file, I'd forwarded one copy to a disposable email address. I set a timer in that account to send everything to his company's compliance department 3 months after I left home. Then I forgot about it. He would never know. I would never tell him. The outcome: the company fired my father. They reclaimed part of the money. They blacklisted him from management roles at any similar firm for 3 years. But they didn't press charges. They didn't want the publicity, and my father cooperated fully. For 2 months he barely left his room. Then he found another job, smaller company, less pay. About half what he'd been making before. He left the house at 7 every morning and came back at 7 every night. He said less and did more. My mother's social circle evaporated. Her old friends stopped calling. She spent more time alone, watching television and staring out windows. She started cooking again. She started cleaning. The house stayed quiet. Kevin's tutoring stopped. Private school became public school. I saw a post on his social media one day, one word, with a broken heart emoji. My uncle and aunt visited less. They'd fallen out with our family over money. My mother had returned their loan short a few $1,000s. Aunt Linda posted a message in the family chat: "Some people don't know how to keep their word." Everyone knew who she meant. Nobody replied. Aunt Pat stopped sending articles about education and marriage. Late one night, she sent me a private message. "Grace, I said things I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. I know you're doing well." I replied, "Thanks." Winter break, I went home for New Year's. It was just 5 of us: my parents, Kevin, Grandma, me. The table was smaller than in previous years. Fewer dishes. No uncle, no aunt, no extended family. But the atmosphere was lighter. Quieter. My father raised his glass to me at dinner. His hand was steady. "Grace," he said, "I'm sorry for everything I did before. You stay in school. Don't worry about us." He drained his glass. His eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. My mother piled food onto my plate: meat, fish, vegetables. I ate everything she gave me. Kevin stood up at one point. Walked to the kitchen, got a bowl, ladled soup into it, and set it down next to Grandma Ella. "Here, Grandma. Drink this." She looked at him for a moment. Then she smiled. The widest smile I'd seen on her face in years. After dinner, I helped my mother wash dishes. She scrubbed, I dried. The water ran. Plates clinked. Then, without looking up, she said, "I'm sorry, Grace." My hands stopped. "I didn't help you when I should have. I was too afraid of your father. I knew what he was doing was wrong." Her voice was almost lost under the faucet. "I've thought about it every day since you left." I looked at her. She was older than I remembered. Gray at the temples. Shoulders curved. "It's okay," I said. "It's over." She wiped her eyes with the back of a wet hand. That night, I went to check on Grandma. She was in bed, but awake, flipping through her old sketchbook. The pages were yellowed, the pencil drawings faded: plain trees, practice fields, library spires, dormitory windows. Every line careful. Every mark intentional. I noticed something I'd missed before. Tucked into the very last page was a strip of paper, a schedule from the university. Dated almost 3 decades ago. One line had been circled over and over in red pen, so many times it had worn through the paper. Orientation, September 1st. I closed the door softly and leaned against the wall outside. I could hear her turning pages inside. One by one. I returned to campus for the spring semester, and something shifted. My feet found their rhythm. The grades came back good. The work felt real. I started carrying Grandma's sketchbook everywhere, studying her lines. Then came the student exhibition. It was an annual show, open to all years, juried, displayed in the campus gallery for a week. I'd been working on something since the end of winter break, a series of 6 oil paintings. I called the set The Far End of the Table. The first was a wide shot, a round dinner table, shadowed, one figure at the far edge nearly consumed by darkness. Only her hands were visible, holding knitting needles. The second was a close-up, old, veined hands clutching a yellowed piece of paper. The third showed 2 male hands tearing a white envelope in half. The fourth was from the floor, looking up at scattered fragments, paper, snapped brushes, charred sketchbook corners. The fifth was a figure in silhouette, rising from a wheelchair, backlit, impossible to read. The sixth showed 2 letters side by side, one ancient and worn, one new but heavily taped. The night before the show, I drove home and picked up Grandma Ella. She'd been circling the date on her calendar for a week. She wore a new floral blouse, had her hair brushed and pinned, and had even found a tube of lipstick somewhere. I'd never seen her wear makeup in my life. The gallery was busy. Students, professors, outside visitors. My 6 paintings were on the far wall, lit perfectly. I wheeled Grandma in front of the first painting. She stared at it. 2 minutes. Then she gestured for me to move to the next. Another 2 minutes. Third. Fourth. Fifth. She took her time, and I didn't rush her. When we got to the 6th, the 2 letters side by side, she stayed there the longest. Then she turned her head and looked at me. Her eyes were wet. "Grace," she said softly, "these are our story?" "Yeah," I said. "I painted them." She reached out and touched the frame. Her fingers shook slightly. "You made me look so young," she said. I crouched down and took her hand. "That's how I see you." Around us, people were gathering. I heard snippets, powerful work. Feels like a whole novel. Is that older woman the one in the paintings? Someone asked their friend, "You see the grandmother character?" Grandma heard them. Her mouth curved. Then she did something I never expected. She reached into her blouse pocket and pulled out the old sketchbook. Opened it to the best preserved page, a pencil drawing of a plane tree, simple but exact. She held it up next to my painting. "Grace," she called across the gallery. "Take my picture." I raised my phone. In the frame, she was holding the sketchbook in one hand, pointing at my painting with the other. Her face was split with the biggest, proudest smile I'd ever seen. A child showing off an A+. I pressed the shutter through blurry eyes. A few weeks later, a professional gallerist named Ms. Novak contacted me. She'd seen the exhibition. She wanted to show the whole set at her space downtown. There was one condition: she wanted to include the sketchbook. "Scans," she said. "For a small publication. I'll do a limited print run." I agreed on one condition: Grandma Ella would sit front row at the opening. Ms. Novak looked at the sketchbook, looked at me, and said, "She'll be front and center. And I'm putting her acceptance letter on the last page, full size. Your story is worth more than the paintings." Opening night was packed. Lines out the door. My 6 originals on one wall, a continuous projection of Grandma's sketchbook on the other. My parents came. My father wore a new shirt, clean-shaven, hair combed. He looked uncomfortable, hands in his pockets, unsure where to stand. My mother held his arm, whispering, "This place is nicer than our living room." Kevin came too. He was wearing his school uniform, backpack still on. He'd come straight from class. He walked up and down the wall, looking at each painting, then circled back and started again. He walked up to me, fidgeting. "Grace," he said, "in that painting, the one with the ripped paper, is that Dad?" I didn't answer. He looked at the painting again, then at his shoes. "I won't kick your easel anymore." I laughed. "You can't. It's in my dorm. You don't even know where that is." He stayed next to me after that, hands in his pockets, dragging his toe across the floor. Then the front door opened. I wheeled Grandma Ella in, and someone in the crowd shouted, "That's her. That's the grandmother from the paintings." The applause started in ripples and rolled across the room, getting louder and louder, until everyone was clapping and some had their phones out, filming. Grandma Ella blinked. Then she smiled, raised her hand, and waved to the room. A celebrity. I wheeled her to the front row. She sat there, looking at the wall, my paintings, the projection of her sketchbook, an enlarged photo of her original acceptance letter, all arranged in a row. She stared for a long time. I offered her water. She didn't take it. Then she turned to me, gripped my hand, and said, "Grace, my whole life was worth it for this night." After the gallery closed, I sat alone in front of my paintings. Ms. Novak had told me there was a buyer interested in the whole set. I said I'd think about it. My phone buzzed. A message from my father, a photo of him standing next to my paintings. He was standing stiffly, like a man in a passport photo. The caption read, "My daughter's art." Another message, "I said things I shouldn't have. Don't hold it against me. I don't get art, but I see you." I sat with that message for a while. Then I typed a single letter, K. My mother sent a message. "Grace, I'm so proud of you." 3 hugging emojis. Kevin sent one too. "Can I have one of your paintings?" "Just the little one." I replied, "When you make the honor roll." The gallery door opened. Grandma Ella had wheeled herself inside. "You're still here." I stood up. "Waiting for you." She pushed to the front row and reached into her pocket. "The sketchbook. I want you to keep this," she said. "It belongs with you now." I took it. Flip open. Her 18-year-old self had filled every page with what she imagined university would be like: plane trees, practice fields, library spires, dorm windows, the gallery door, the studio's north-facing light. At the very back, I found a new piece of paper, tucked in. On it, in ballpoint pen, slightly shaky. September 1, 2026. My granddaughter registered for me. She's braver than I was. Below that, in different ink, added later. Eleanor Hartwell finally graduated. 28 years late. But she did it. I held the sketchbook to my chest. Tears hit the worn cover. Grandma patted my head. "Don't cry. I'm happy. Do you like my lipstick?" I laughed through tears. "It's beautiful." I made a limited edition booklet of Grandma's sketchbook. I sold it at the gallery. 30 copies. Then 100. Then Ms. Novak did a second run. The last page showed 2 photos, Grandma's original acceptance letter, yellowed and fragile, and mine, cracked and taped. Beneath them, 2 lines. Eleanor Hartwell, 1998. Grace Hartwell, 2026. 28 years apart. I used the proceeds to buy Grandma a new wheelchair. Better suspension. Thicker cushion. Bigger wheels. She called me when it arrived. "This thing is great," she said. Mrs. Patterson pushed me around the block and she didn't even get winded. A month later, my father called, hesitant. Could you send me one of those booklets?" I mailed him a copy. He responded, "Read it." Then silence for 3 days. On the 4th day, he sent a long message. Full of misspellings, rambling. He talked about his father, his sisters, his choices. He said he'd learned the wrong lessons from the wrong people. He said he was sorry. He said he was trying to be different. I read it 3 times. Then I replied, "It's in the past." It wasn't really. The wounds were still there, like holes in wood where nails had been pulled out. You can see them, you can feel them, even after the nail is gone. But I'd stopped covering them up. One weekend in spring, I brought Grandma Ella to campus again. She could walk with a walker now, slowly. She insisted on covering the full distance from the gate to the design building herself, refusing the wheelchair. "Today I walk," she said. "It's not negotiable." We made it at a crawl, 40 minutes for what should have taken 10. But she looked at every tree. She stopped at every flowering shrub. She commented on everything, and I let her. At the design building, she let go of the walker, reached out, and touched the brass nameplate by the door. School of Fine Arts, Design Department. She ran her fingers along the letters, one by one. "Here," she said. I made it. That night, on the way out of campus, she stopped me. "Grace." "Yeah. Do you think, if I'd come here when I was supposed to, what would my life have been like?" I thought about it. "You'd have been a professor. Sitting in an office, drinking tea, bossing students around." She laughed. "Shame I missed it." "But you didn't miss it," I said. She looked up at me. "Because I'm here," I said. "You're here through me." She stared at me for a moment. Then she patted my hand and said, "Yeah. I suppose that's the same thing, isn't it?" We walked out the gate together. The sun was setting behind us. Over the next year, I kept painting. I kept studying. I started to make a name for myself in the local art scene. One night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A man's voice, formal and clipped. "Ms. Hartwell, I'm Mr. Grayson from the legal department of Summit Materials. I'm calling about your father. There are some questions surrounding an anonymous report filed last year. We'd like to ask." "No," I said. "I don't know anything." He paused. "You don't have any relevant documents?" "We're willing to compensate for any useful information." "Nothing," I said. I deleted everything. He thanked me and hung up. The next weekend, I went home. I found Grandma on the balcony, sunning herself. Eyes closed. Peaceful. "Grandma," I said, sitting down next to her. "Did anyone from Dad's old company contact you?" She opened her eyes. "No." "Why?" "Just wondering. They're still looking for whoever sent that report." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Tell them it was me." My mouth dropped open. "I sent it," she said calmly. "Well, I had Mark's kid do it. The one in college. He knows computers." I stared at her. "You think I didn't know about those screenshots?" She smiled. "The night you made them, I was awake. I saw you on your laptop. The next day, while you were at school, I copied everything onto my own drive. I had Mark's son set up a new email address. I told him to send it 3 months after you left. Grandma. Your father's mistakes were going to catch up with him eventually. I just made sure it happened before he dragged the whole family down with him. She looked at me, steady and clear. Do you think I did wrong? I shook my head. Tears spilling. You've been protecting me this whole time. Of course I've been protecting you. She reached over and touched my cheek. Do you know where I got the money I gave you? The cash in my wallet. I shook my head again. I sold my wedding bracelet. I'd kept it for 30 years. Was going to take it to my grave. But you were worth more than any piece of gold. I put my head in her lap and sobbed. She didn't shush me. She just stroked my hair and let me cry until I was empty. Don't waste your tears, she said. I'm not dead yet. You can cry when I'm dead. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. She smiled down at me. I want to see you graduate. I want to see you get married. I want to meet your kids. That's plenty of time. It's been years since that summer. My father found another job, smaller and quieter. He stopped bragging. He stopped drinking as much. He shared my exhibition announcements in the family group chat now. My mother went back and got her CPA certification. Kevin's grades are still mediocre, but he doesn't break things anymore. Sometimes he sends me drawings he's done, they're terrible. But he's practicing. Aunt Linda and Uncle Mark drifted away. That's fine, Grandma says. Some people were never meant to stay close. Aunt Pat sends recipes now instead of articles. And Grandma Ella, she walks every day. She's up to 3 blocks now. She has a new walker, light blue, that she picked out herself. She sends me voice messages from the bench outside her building. Today I walked 4. I'm getting fast. That's amazing, Grandma. When are you coming home? I'll make your favorite fish. Next weekend. I'll buy the fish. Tell me about your new painting. Okay. After I hang up, I sit in my studio and look at the 2 acceptance letters on my wall. One yellow and worn. One cracked and taped. They hang side by side. The light hits them through the window. The tape casts shadows. But I don't see cracks anymore. I just see 2 letters. 28 years apart. Both made it to the same wall. And on the back of my grandmother's sketchbook, in handwriting that's grown shakier but no less fierce, there's a final line she added last winter. Eleanor Hartwell. Spring 2028. Walked to the mailbox and back by myself. Didn't stop once. Below that, in her last note to me. Grace called today. Made my whole month. I keep that sketchbook by my bed. Every night, I flip through it. Every page holds something I'm still learning. And in the mornings, I get up and walk to my studio. The sun hits my windows the same way it hit hers all those years ago. The chair at the far end of the table has stood up. And now so have I.